Commander Kale Vorthan stood at the control panel of his ship, watching the blue planet grow larger through the viewing screen. Earth. The humans called it Earth. To his people, the Zerathians, it was simply Target 7749, another world to study, another species to evaluate. Kale had done this work for 12 solar cycles. He had visited more than 40 planets. He had seen creatures of every shape and size. Nothing surprised him anymore. His mission was simple. Land quietly. Watch the humans. Report back to the fleet. Do not let them see you. Do not talk to them. Do not touch them. The rules were clear, and Kale always followed rules. He was the best fighter in the Zerathian military. He had never failed a mission. He had never lost a battle. His commanders trusted him completely. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere smoothly. Kale activated the cloaking system, making the vessel invisible to human technology. He planned to land in an empty area, far from cities and people. But as the ship descended through the clouds, something went wrong. Warning lights flashed across every screen. The cloaking system failed. Then the navigation system died. The ship began to shake violently. Kale grabbed the emergency controls and tried to steer, but the ship would not respond. He was falling fast, spinning through the night sky like a wounded bird. Below him, he could see lights, a small town near the ocean. Houses, roads, people sleeping in their beds, completely unaware that an alien vessel was about to crash into their world. The impact was brutal. Kale felt his body slam against the restraints as the ship hit the ground. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Then everything went silent. When Kale opened his eyes, he was lying in dirt and broken machinery. His ship was destroyed, scattered in pieces across what appeared to be a garden. Flowers were crushed beneath the wreckage. A wooden fence had been completely knocked down. And standing just a few steps away, holding a garden tool like a weapon, was a human female. She was small compared to him. Her black hair was tied back and her dark eyes were wide with shock. But she was not running. She was not screaming. She stood her ground, pointing the tool at him, her hand steady. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What is this? What are you?" Kale had studied human languages during his training. He understood her words, but he did not answer. He was trying to assess the situation. His ship was gone. His communication device was destroyed. He was stranded on an alien planet with no way to contact his fleet. And this tiny human was looking at him like she might actually try to fight him. He almost laughed. She had no idea what he was capable of. Zerathian warriors were stronger, faster, and more powerful than any species in the galaxy. He could break her in half with one hand. He could knock her unconscious with a single blow. She was nothing to him, but there was something in her eyes. Something he had never seen before on any world he had visited. It was not fear. It was not submission. It was defiance. Pure, stubborn, ridiculous defiance. She knew she could not win against him. She had to know. And yet she stood there anyway, ready to fight. It made him angry. It made no sense. Why would any creature stand against an enemy it could not defeat? Why would she risk her life for nothing? His people valued logic, strategy, and survival. This human was being foolish, and her foolishness annoyed him deeply. Kale moved fast. In 1 second, he was in front of her. He grabbed the collar of her shirt and lifted her off the ground. Her feet dangled in the air. The garden tool fell from her hands. Up close, he could see the fear finally entering her eyes. Good. She should be afraid. She should understand her place. "You will not speak to me like that," he said, his voice low and cold. "You will show respect to a Zerathian commander." But as he spoke those words, something strange happened. Their eyes met, and Kale felt a sudden jolt of energy pass through his body. It was like being struck by lightning. Pain exploded in his head, behind his eyes, deep in his throat. He tried to speak again, but no sound came out. He tried to shout, to command, to threaten, but there was only silence. His grip on the human loosened. She fell to the ground, gasping for air. Kale stumbled backward, clutching his throat. What was happening to him? What had she done? He opened his mouth again and again, but nothing came out. His voice was gone, completely gone. The world began to spin. The pain in his head grew worse. He saw the human watching him, her expression changing from fear to confusion to something else. Concern, maybe? Why would she be concerned about him? He had just attacked her. He had threatened her life. And now she was looking at him like she wanted to help. That was his last thought before the darkness took him. He collapsed onto the destroyed garden, unconscious, powerless, and completely silent. Maya-chan stood over the alien's body, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were shaking. Her neck hurt where he had grabbed her. But she was alive. She was alive, and this creature, this impossible, terrifying creature from another world, was lying at her feet. She should call someone. The police. The military. Someone who knew how to handle this situation. But as she looked down at him, she hesitated. He was breathing slowly, peacefully. His face, which had been twisted with anger just moments ago, now looked almost gentle. Almost human. Maya was a marine biologist. She had spent her entire career studying creatures that most people feared: sharks, jellyfish, deep-sea predators. She knew that sometimes the most dangerous-looking animals were also the most misunderstood. She knew that fear often led people to destroy things they did not understand. She made a decision. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was the biggest mistake of her life. But she could not bring herself to turn him over to people who would probably treat him like a monster or a weapon. She dragged his heavy body into her garage. It took almost an hour. Her arms ached. Her back screamed in protest. But finally, she got him inside. She closed the door. She locked it. And then she sat down on the cold concrete floor, staring at the unconscious alien, wondering what on earth she had just gotten herself into. 3 days passed before he woke up. When Kale opened his eyes, he did not know where he was. The ceiling above him was made of wood and metal. The air smelled strange, like oil and salt, and something sweet he could not identify. He tried to sit up, but his body felt weak, heavy, wrong. He looked down at himself. Someone had wrapped white cloth around his wounds. Someone had cleaned the blood from his skin. Someone had placed a soft blanket over him and put a pillow under his head. These were acts of kindness. But why? Who would show kindness to an enemy? The door opened, and the human female walked in. She carried a tray with food and water. When she saw that he was awake, she stopped. They stared at each other for a long moment. He remembered grabbing her. He remembered the fear in her eyes. He expected her to run or to attack or to call for help. Instead, she set the tray down beside him and took a step back. "You've been unconscious for 3 days," she said. "I wasn't sure you were going to wake up." Kale opened his mouth to respond. Nothing came out. He tried again, pushing air through his throat, forcing his vocal cords to work. But there was only silence. His voice was still gone. Panic rose in his chest. A Zerathian commander's voice was everything. It was power. It was authority. It was the weapon he used to control enemies and lead soldiers. Without his voice, he was nothing. Less than nothing. He was helpless. The human watched him struggle. "You can't speak," she said. It was not a question. "Whatever happened when you grabbed me, it took your voice away." Kale did not understand. What kind of power could steal a voice? He had never encountered anything like this in all his years of warfare. He looked at the human with new eyes. Was she some kind of witch? Did her species possess abilities his people did not know about? She seemed to read his thoughts. "I didn't do anything," she said quickly. "I'm just a scientist. I study the ocean. I don't have any special powers." She paused. "My name is Maya-chan." He stared at her. She was offering her name like a gift. Like they were equals. Like he had not tried to hurt her just days ago. It made no sense. Maya pulled a chair over and sat down a safe distance from him. "Look," she said, "I don't know what you are or where you came from, but I saw your ship crash. I know you're not from Earth, and I know that if I call the authorities, they will probably lock you up in some underground facility and do experiments on you for the rest of your life." She took a deep breath. "So I'm giving you a choice. You can try to attack me again, and I'll scream loud enough for my neighbors to hear. Or you can accept my help and figure out what happened to you." Kale considered his options. He was weak. He was voiceless. He was stranded on an enemy planet with no way to contact his fleet. If he attacked this human, she would scream, and others would come. He would be captured. He would be studied like an animal. His people would never find him, but if he accepted her help, what then? He would be depending on a species his commanders considered primitive and inferior. He would be putting his survival in the hands of a creature he was trained to conquer. He looked at Maya's face. She was afraid. He could see it in the slight tremor of her hands and the tension around her eyes. But she was still here. She was still offering him help. Why? What did she want from him? He reached for the tray she had brought. There was bread, some kind of fruit, and a glass of water. He picked up the bread and ate slowly. It was not like the food on his home planet, but it was not bad. The water was clean and cool. When he finished, he looked at Maya and nodded once. It was the only way he could say thank you. Over the next few weeks, they developed a strange system of communication. Maya brought him paper and pencils, and Kale drew pictures to express his thoughts. He drew his ship. He drew his planet. He drew his commanders and his soldiers and the fleet that was probably searching for him. Right now, Maya was surprisingly quick to understand. She asked questions by pointing at the drawings, and Kale would nod or shake his head. When pictures were not enough, she used hand signals. Eventually, she brought a tablet and created a simple program with symbols that Kale could touch to form sentences. Through this slow, difficult process, Kale learned many things about Earth. He learned that humans had countries and languages and cultures, all different from each other. He learned that they fought wars among themselves, but also created art and music and stories. He learned that Maya lived alone because she was too focused on her work to build relationships. He learned that she had been studying strange patterns in the ocean for months, patterns that did not match any known natural phenomenon. When she showed him her research, Kale felt a cold fear in his stomach. The patterns she had documented were not natural. They were created by Zarethian scout ships. His people had been watching Earth for much longer than he realized. And Maya, with her careful observations and her detailed records, had unknowingly been tracking them the whole time. He wanted to warn her. He tried to write the words on the tablet. Danger, your planet, my people. But the moment he tried to form the complete message, his hand froze. Pain shot through his arm. His fingers would not move. He could not write the warning. Kale understood immediately. His commanders had put fail-safes in all their soldiers. Neural implants that prevented them from betraying important information. Even if he wanted to help Maya, even if he wanted to save her planet, his own body would not let him. He was still a prisoner of his training, still bound by the programming that made him a weapon. He threw the tablet across the room in frustration. Maya jumped back. startled by his sudden anger. Then she saw the pain in his eyes, and her expression softened. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." She picked up the tablet and set it beside him again. She did not ask questions. She did not demand explanations. She simply sat with him in the silence, letting him know that he was not alone. Days turned into weeks. Cale's body grew stronger, but his voice did not return. He stopped trying to speak. He stopped hoping for rescue. He started paying attention to Maya instead. The way she laughed at her own jokes, the way she talked to the plants in her garden, the way she fell asleep reading books about the ocean. She was strange. She was illogical. She was nothing like the efficient, disciplined soldiers he had known all his life. And yet, she had saved him. She had shown him kindness when he deserved punishment. She had given him a chance when she had every reason to be afraid. For the first time in his existence, Cale began to question everything he had been taught. Maybe humans were not primitive. Maybe his people were not superior. Maybe strength was not about power and dominance, but about something else entirely. Something he was only beginning to understand. His silence had become less of a curse and more of a gift. For the first time, he was listening instead of commanding. And what he heard was changing him in ways he could not explain. David Okonkwo had known Maya Chun for 5 years. They had studied together in university. They had worked together at the Marine Research Center. He considered her one of his closest friends. So when she started acting strange, he noticed immediately. It began with small things. She stopped coming to team meetings. She canceled lunch plans at the last minute. She started leaving work early, always with some excuse about feeling tired or needing to check something at home. Maya had always been dedicated to her research. She had never missed a day of work in her life. Now she was distracted, secretive, and nervous. Something was very wrong. David tried to talk to her about it. "Maya, is everything okay?" he asked one afternoon. "You seem different lately." Maya looked up from her computer with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she said. "Just busy with a personal project." But David did not believe her. He started watching more carefully. He noticed that Maya's electricity bills had increased dramatically. He noticed that she was buying large amounts of food, much more than one person could eat. He noticed that she had installed new locks on her garage door and covered all the windows. One night, David drove past her house. He parked down the street and watched. Around midnight, he saw a strange blue light flickering inside the garage. It lasted only a few seconds, then disappeared. David felt his heart racing. What was Maya hiding in there? He wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe she had adopted a large pet. Maybe she was working on some kind of experiment. But deep inside, David knew it was something bigger. Something dangerous. The next day, he made a phone call. He had a cousin who worked for a government agency, the kind of agency that investigated unusual events. David told his cousin about Maya's strange behavior, about the light in the garage, about his feeling that something was not right. His cousin thanked him and said someone would look into it. David did not know that his phone call would change everything. Inside Maya's garage, Cale was working on his ship. Most of it was destroyed beyond repair, but some pieces still functioned. The communication array was badly damaged, but if he could fix it, he might be able to contact his fleet. He might be able to go home. But as he worked, he found himself moving slower and slower. His hands did not want to complete the repairs. His mind kept wandering to Maya, her voice, her laugh, the way she explained her ocean research with so much passion. She had become important to him, more important than anything had ever been. He thought about what would happen if his fleet came to Earth. The Zerathians were not cruel, but they were practical. They would evaluate the humans as a species. If they found them useful, they would offer an alliance. If they found them threatening, they would eliminate them. And Maya, with her research on their scout ships, would certainly be considered a threat. Kale could not let that happen. He had spent weeks watching this human care for him without asking anything in return. He had seen her kindness, her curiosity, her hope. He had seen the way she looked at the stars at night, wondering if anything was out there. She was good, truly good, and he could not be the reason she was destroyed. He made a decision. With one powerful strike, he smashed the communication array into pieces. The metal crumbled under his fist. Sparks flew. The connection to his fleet was gone forever. He was now completely stranded on Earth, with no way to call for rescue. Maya walked in just as he finished. She saw the destroyed equipment, the sparks still fading in the air, the determination on his face. She did not ask what he had done. Somehow, she understood. "You're staying," she said quietly. "You're really staying?" Kale looked at her and nodded. Yes, he was staying. Whatever happened next, he would face it here, on this planet, with this human who had shown him what it meant to be truly strong. That night, they sat together on her porch, watching the stars. Maya told him stories about human history, about wars and peace, about hatred and love, about all the mistakes her species had made and all the ways they had tried to do better. Kale listened to every word. He was learning more in these quiet moments than he had learned in all his years of training. But their peace was about to end. The next morning, Maya noticed a black car parked at the end of her street. It was still there when she came home from work. Different car, same spot. Someone was watching her house, she told Kale, and she saw the change in his eyes. He knew what this meant. Danger was coming. They had been discovered. For 3 days, the cars came and went. Different vehicles, different times, but always watching. Maya tried to act normal. Going to work, buying groceries, waving to her neighbors. But inside, she was terrified. What would they do to Kale if they found him? What would they do to her for hiding him? On the 4th night, they came. Maya was asleep when she heard the crash. Her front door had been knocked down. Heavy boots were running through her house. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Men in black uniforms were shouting orders, clearing every room. She jumped out of bed and ran toward the garage. If she could, warned Kale, if she could give him time to escape, but it was too late. Soldiers were already there, surrounding the garage, pointing their weapons at the door. The door burst open, and Kale stepped out. He was not trying to hide. He was not trying to fight. He stood with his hands raised, looking directly at Maya. His eyes were calm, peaceful, almost gentle. He was surrendering, not because he was weak, but because he knew that fighting would put her in danger. The soldiers grabbed him roughly. They pushed him to the ground. They put metal restraints on his wrists. Through it all, Kale did not resist. He kept his eyes on Maya, trying to tell her something without words. Maya fought against the soldiers holding her. "Don't hurt him," she screamed. "He hasn't done anything wrong. Please, listen to me." But no one was listening. They dragged Kale toward a large black van. They pushed Maya into a separate vehicle. The last thing she saw before they covered her eyes was Kale's face, still calm, still peaceful, still looking at her like she was the most important thing in the universe. They were taken to a place Maya had never seen before. Underground, cold, full of concrete walls and metal doors and the hum of machines. She was placed in a small room with bright lights and a single chair. Kale was taken somewhere else. She did not know where. For hours, people in suits asked her questions. Who was the alien? Where did he come from? What did he tell her? What were his plans? Maya answered honestly. She told them about the crash, about his lost voice, about the weeks they had spent learning to communicate. She told them he was not dangerous. She told them he had chosen to stay on Earth. She told them he had destroyed his own equipment to protect their planet. They did not believe her. "You've been compromised," one of the agents said coldly. He manipulated you. That's what they do. Maya shook her head. You're wrong, she said. He's not what you think he is. But her words meant nothing. They had already decided what Kale was, a threat, an enemy, a weapon to be studied and controlled, somewhere in that underground facility, in a cold cell designed to hold creatures from other worlds. Kale sat in silence. He could not speak. He could not explain. He could only wait and hope that somehow Maya would find a way to save them both. The facility was buried deep under the Nevada desert. It had no name, no official records, no existence on any government map. Inside its walls, scientists studied things that the public was not supposed to know about. Strange objects that fell from the sky, signals that came from distant stars. And now, for the first time in history, a living being from another world. Kale's cell was made of thick glass that could withstand the force of a bomb. The walls behind the glass were solid steel. There were cameras in every corner, recording his every movement. Sensors measured his heart rate, his body temperature, his brain activity. He was watched every second of every day. Scientists came to study him like he was an animal in a zoo. They took samples of his blood. They scanned his body with strange machines. They tried to communicate with him using pictures and sounds, but he refused to respond. He sat in the corner of his cell, silent and still, giving them nothing. The only time he showed any reaction was when they mentioned Maya. One scientist said her name during a conversation with a colleague, and Kale's head snapped up. His eyes locked on the scientist with an intensity that made the man step backward. In that moment, everyone in the room understood something important. The alien cared about the human woman. That connection could be useful. They brought Maya to him on the 42nd. She looked tired, thin. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes were wrinkled. But when she saw Kale through the glass, her face lit up with relief. She pressed her hand against the transparent wall, and Kale stood slowly and walked toward her. They stood there, separated by unbreakable glass, looking at each other. Kale placed his hand against the wall, matching the position of her fingers. Neither of them could speak. Kale because he had no voice, Maya because her throat was too tight with emotion. But in that silence, something passed between them. Something the scientists watching on their monitors could not understand. Maya pulled herself together. She had work to do. She had spent the past 6 weeks fighting for Kale's freedom, and this visit was her last chance to make a difference. I'm going to get you out of here, she said quietly. I promise. Kale shook his head slowly. He did not want her to make promises she could not keep. He did not want her to put herself in more danger for his sake. But Maya was stubborn. She always had been. She turned to face the cameras. I know you're watching, she said loudly. I know you're recording everything. Good, because I have something to say, and I want everyone to hear it. In the control room, agents and scientists gathered around the monitors. The facility director, a stern woman named Colonel Barbara Hayes, watched with narrow eyes. She had heard many things during her years in this job. She had learned to trust nothing and believe no one. But something about Maya Chun's voice made her pay attention. Maya told them everything. She told them about her research on ocean patterns, how she had been tracking unknown objects in the water for months before Kale's crash. She showed them her data, which she had memorized because they had taken all her files. She explained that the objects were alien scout ships, observing Earth for years without ever attacking or making contact. They're not invaders, Maya said. They're refugees. Kale's planet is dying. His people have been searching for a new home across the galaxy. They've been watching us, studying us, trying to understand if we would be friends or enemies. She took a deep breath. And you're proving to them that we're enemies. You're showing them that humans capture and cage anything they don't understand. Colonel Hayes leaned forward. How do you know this? She demanded through the speaker system. How do you know what his people want? Maya looked back at Cale. He was watching her with something that might have been hope. She thought about all those weeks in her garage, the drawings and gestures and slow, difficult conversations. She thought about what she had learned, not just about his people, but about him. He told me, she said simply. Not with words. With patience. With time. With trust. She turned back to the cameras. He destroyed his only way to contact his fleet because he didn't want them to hurt us. He surrendered peacefully because he didn't want your soldiers to hurt me. He has done nothing but protect us since he arrived on this planet. And you're treating him like a monster. There was a long silence. In the control room, some of the younger scientists exchanged uncomfortable glances. Colonel Hayes kept her expression neutral, but her mind was working quickly. Then a new voice spoke up. May I say something? A young woman stepped forward. Her name was Dr. Priya Sharma, and she was a linguist who specialized in communication patterns. She had been studying Cale's behavior since he arrived, trying to decode his silent responses. I've been analyzing his movements, his reactions, his facial expressions, Priya said. Everything he does follows patterns, emotional patterns. When he looks at Miss Chun, his expressions match what humans show when they feel love or deep attachment. When the scientists take blood samples, he shows signs of fear, but also acceptance. He understands what's happening to him. He's not an animal. He's a thinking, feeling being. She pulled up a file on her tablet. But here's what convinced me. On day 15, I observed him alone in his cell at night. The cameras recorded him making repetitive hand movements. The same movements over and over for hours. She looked at Maya. Those movements were the gesture language you created together. He was practicing. He was making sure he wouldn't forget how to talk to you. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not wipe them away. Colonel Hayes was quiet for a long time. Then she asked a question that surprised everyone. If we released him, what would he do? Maya answered without hesitation. He would stay. He would help us. He would be the bridge between our species and his. Because that's who he is. Not a warrior, not a weapon, but someone who learned that connection matters more than conquest. The decision took 5 more days. There were arguments, debates, threats, and compromises. Some wanted to keep Cale locked up forever. Some wanted to send him to other facilities for more experiments. But in the end, Colonel Hayes made the call. She was a practical woman, and she saw an opportunity. Earth's first alien contact should not be a prisoner. It should be an ally. On day 47, the glass door of Cale's cell opened for the first time. He stepped out slowly, looking around at the soldiers and scientists who had kept him captive. None of them tried to stop him. Maya was waiting in the hallway. When she saw him walking toward her, free and unguarded, she ran. She threw her arms around him and held on tight, not caring about the dozen people watching them. Cale wrapped his arms around her carefully, afraid of his own strength. He pressed his face against her hair and breathed in her scent, salt and flowers and home. He was free. She had freed him. Against all logic, against all odds, she had fought for him and won. He wanted to thank her. He wanted to tell her what she meant to him. But his voice was still gone, so he did the only thing he could. He held her tighter and hoped she understood. She did. 6 months had passed since Cale walked out of that underground facility. So much had changed since then. He now lived in a small house next to Maya's, a condition of his asylum that he did not mind at all. Government agents still watched him through cameras and regular visits, but they had stopped treating him like a prisoner. He was a guest now, a strange guest from another world, But a guest nonetheless thought Maya had returned to her research, but everything was different. The government had given her access to technology and resources she had never dreamed of. Her work on ocean patterns had become the foundation of Earth's first alien detection system. She was no longer just a marine biologist. She was a pioneer, a bridge between worlds, and she loved every moment of it. But the best part of her day was always the evening, when she would walk over to Cale's house and sit with him on his small porch. They would watch the sunset together, communicating through the gesture language they had created. Sometimes they talked about serious things, his home planet, his family, the fleet that might still be looking for him. Sometimes they talked about simple things, the taste of Earth food, the sound of ocean waves, the strange habits of her neighbor's dog. Cale had learned to read human emotions very well during his months of silence. He could tell when Maya was happy, sad, worried, or tired just by watching her face. He knew when she needed him to listen and when she needed him to hold her hand. He understood her better than he had ever understood anyone, including himself. But there was one thing he could not give her: words. Real words, spoken out loud in her language. Every night, after she went home, he practiced. He sat alone in his dark house and tried to make sounds. He pushed air through his throat, shaped his lips around syllables, struggled to create even the simplest noise. Nothing worked. His voice remained trapped somewhere deep inside him. Dr. Priya Sharma visited him regularly, trying to understand what had happened to his vocal system. She ran tests, recorded his throat movements, analyzed every part of his sound-producing anatomy. According to her machines, there was nothing physically wrong with him. His vocal cords were intact. His muscles were functional. But somehow, the connection between his brain and his voice had been broken. "I have a theory," Priya said one afternoon. "When you grabbed Maya that first night, something happened between you. An energy exchange. We don't understand it yet, but I think it rewired certain pathways in your brain." She paused. "You were a commander. Your voice was your weapon. You used it to dominate, to control, to force others to obey. Maybe you can't speak anymore because that old way of speaking no longer fits who you are." Cale thought about her words for days. Was she right? Had his silence been a kind of punishment or a kind of transformation? He had spent his whole life commanding others, never listening, never questioning. Now he could not command anyone. He could only observe, learn, understand. His silence had forced him to become someone new. But who was this new person? What did he have to offer, if not his voice? The answer came to him slowly, through the weeks of sitting with Maya, watching her work, learning about her world. He realized that his silence was not emptiness. It was space for others to speak, to be heard, to matter. His silence was a gift he could give to the people he cared about. The gift of his full attention, the gift of his presence. Still, he wished he could speak. Just once. Just to tell Maya what she meant to him. 3 months later, it happened. Maya was sitting on Cale's porch, telling him about a difficult day at work. Some government officials wanted to use her research for military purposes, and she had refused. They had threatened to take away her funding, her equipment, her access to alien technology. She was frustrated, angry, and scared. "Sometimes I wonder if any of this is worth it," she said, her voice tired. "All the fighting, all the politics, all the suspicion. Maybe I should just go back to studying fish." Cale listened to every word. He saw the doubt in her eyes, the exhaustion in her shoulders. She had given up so much for this work, for the mission of connecting two species that had never met before. She had risked her career, her safety, her whole life. And now she was wondering if it mattered. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to say that it mattered more than anything. He wanted to explain that she had changed him, saved him, taught him what it meant to truly care about another being. He wanted to give her the words she needed to keep going. He opened his mouth. He pushed air through his throat. And something happened. A sound. Rough, scratchy, barely audible. But a sound. Maya's head snapped toward him. Her eyes went wide. Kale tried again. His throat burned. His chest ached. But he pushed through the pain, forcing the words out one syllable at a time. Thank you. He gasped for breath. For hearing me? When I had no sound, Maya stared at him. For a moment, she did not move, did not speak, did not breathe. Then tears began to fall down her cheeks. She reached out and took his hand. You spoke, she whispered. Kale, you spoke. He nodded, exhausted but happy. His voice was not what it used to be. It would never be a weapon again. But maybe that was okay. Maybe his new voice could be something better. Not a tool for control, but a way to connect Dot in the weeks that followed. Kale's voice slowly returned. Not all at once, but word by word, sentence by sentence. He worked with Priya and Maya to rebuild his ability to speak, this time in their language instead of his own. It was hard. There were many failures, but every small success felt like a miracle. Eventually, he was ready to address a larger audience. The United Nations had requested a meeting with Earth's first alien ambassador. They wanted to understand his people, his mission, his intentions. They wanted to know if humanity should prepare for war or hope for peace. Kale stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces from every nation on Earth. Cameras broadcast his image to billions of people around the world. This was the moment that would define the future of two species. He took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice was still rough, still imperfect. He paused often, searching for the right words. He used the gesture language sometimes when words failed him. But he spoke from his heart, and that was enough. He told them about his planet, about his people, about the dying galaxy they were fleeing. He told them about his mission to Earth, his crash, his silence, his transformation. He told them about Maya, how she had saved him when she had every reason to fear him, how she had taught him that strength was not about power, but about compassion. I was sent here to observe your species, he said, to judge if you were worthy of alliance or deserving of destruction. I was trained to see only threats and resources. I was taught that kindness was weakness, that mercy was foolishness, that connection was a distraction from conquest. He paused, looking at Maya in the front row. She smiled at him, her eyes bright with tears and pride. I was wrong, he continued. Your species is flawed. You fight among yourselves. You harm your own planet. You fear what you do not understand. But you are also capable of extraordinary goodness. You save strangers. You fight for justice. You love deeply and fiercely, even when it costs you everything. He gripped the edges of the podium, gathering his strength for his final words. My people are coming to this galaxy, not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking a new home. They will find your planet, and they will want to know if you can be trusted. I cannot speak for all of them, but I can speak for myself. And I tell you this, one human woman showed me more about true power than a lifetime of warfare ever could. She taught me that connection is not weakness. It is the only thing that matters. He stepped back from the podium. The room was silent. Then, slowly, people began to stand. They began to clap. The applause grew louder, spreading through the hall like a wave. Kale did not care about the applause. He walked down from the stage and went straight to Maya. She met him halfway, throwing her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she had on the day he was freed. You did it, she said against his chest. You were amazing. Kale held her close, breathing in the scent of salt and flowers. Home. She was his home now. We did it, he whispered. Together. That night, they sat on Maya's rebuilt porch, watching the stars. The surveillance teams had gone home. The cameras were dark. They were alone for the first time in a long while. Kale looked up at the sky, wondering which distant light was his dying planet. He thought about his family, his people, his old life as a commander. All of it seemed so far away now. Maya leaned against him, warm and close. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. He considered the question. There was so much he could say. So many words he had waited months to speak. But in the end, he chose just a few. "I am thinking," he said slowly, "that across the vast emptiness of space, I had to lose my voice to finally understand what communication really means." Maya looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the starlight. "What does it mean?" she asked. Kale smiled, a real smile, the kind he had never learned on his home planet. "It means being present," he said. "It means listening. It means having the courage to stay, even when staying is the hardest thing in the universe." Maya smiled back. She did not need to respond. Her presence beside him said everything. They sat together in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds, finally fluent in the only language that truly